Here we are. We are live, back in action for episode 12, the Elevate Cleveland podcast. Of course, we have my wonderful co-host, Chris Doyle here.
How's it going, guys? We got some new equipment.
Yeah, we're changing things up recently. I like this thing. It's going to get getting used to. It doesn't move every single way I want, but it works. I like it better than the stands.
I think it works great. I can lean back finally.
Yeah,
when I was talking to Tim Natale, I was like, oh, my back hurts.
Yeah, it's a little bit more casual now. We're truly in a bar, just minus the bourbon.
Yeah, you got
the bourbon or the glass of wine. So, and we can't forget, we have a wonderful guest here today. We have Laura Volpini.
Hey.
Laura, thank you for coming out.
Oh,
appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, as busy as you are, we know it. It's definitely tough to book into your schedule, so we do appreciate it.
Oh, of course.
If you can, let our guests know and our viewers know who it is you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Laura Volpini. I'm the founding member of Volpini Law. I am a real estate and business attorney here in Cleveland. I'm also a licensed real estate agent in the state of Ohio with Volpini Realty, which is a family brokerage.
Amazing. Family brokerage. So, part of like my research into you and what it is you do and everything like that and your brand is seeing that you grew up around a construction company and around real estate. So if you can kind of paint that picture for us as to, why eventually that took you into it and what it is you saw with your folks, or was it your grandparents, or just touch on that a little bit.
Sure. I came from a family in real estate. On my father's side, it was construction. So we're Italian, and it just seems like everybody who's Italian is in construction, and that holds true. Plus, we're from Youngstown, so that really holds true.
Sure.
So my great-grandfather was a contractor, my grandfather, my father, and now my brother.
Awesome.
So I just came from that world. My dad was a builder-developer of custom homes, and my mother, who is from Italy, came here when she was 17, met my dad, married him about 6 weeks later. She did not speak English. She did not speak Italian, and they're still married today. So
there you go.
Kudos.
And she was here just a few years. She had 3 kids, and she decided that she wanted to work. She loved the opportunity that America gave, right, that she didn't have in Italy, and she wanted to work. But what do you do when you came from Italy and you don't have a high school degree? And so she decided to get a real estate license. And so she got her license in 81. At a time when the interest rates were, in the low 20s.
Yeah.
And it was a male-dominated industry at that time. So she's starting out not speaking the language. Like most of us, she didn't have an extensive list of high school friends and college friends, a CRM
network.
Database.
Yeah.
She was trying to learn English while she was answering phones. They used to have phone duty. They don't really have that anymore. In an all-male profession, and she just broke through and crushed it in real estate while having 3 small children. And so it was a very unique environment because it was very entrepreneurial, right? I was exposed to that at a very young age, what it looks like to own your own business, to run it, and to plan. And because it was in real estate, when I was 18, I had been on more showings and more open houses, gone on more listing appointments than most agents do in their whole entire career. Because my mom, my mom didn't have a choice, right? She had to just bring us if she couldn't find a sitter. So. Yeah, I just got this incredible exposure to it. And then my dad, being a builder, gave me the additional exposure to how, you develop a subdivision. How do you build and sell a house? So it was just a crazy amount of knowledge that I got very young, at a very young age. And then it was my mom who actually encouraged me to go to law school. While I was at John Carroll in my undergrad, she said, hey, I have an idea for you. Why don't you get your law degree? And I'm like, I'm not sure about that. And so her grand plan for my life is that I would be own a title agency. And that I would only have to work 8 to 5 in her mind, and that she would give me her deals. But you never followed
the grand plan.
Yeah, exactly. She had this grand plan, right? So she's very opportunistic. She's entrepreneurial. So she's like, I think this will work. And so I said, okay, I think I'll go to law school. So I did, but the plan kind of stopped because I didn't go into title. I just ended up in a litigation firm, but I was still handling real estate work. So I started my law practice, in a litigation firm, and I was doing real estate and business stuff. So. And now I come full circle as a real estate lawyer and an agent, and coming back into their business in a different way has been very special for them.
Yeah.
Right, that they could have that.
So Chris, remind our viewers again who it is we are and what we do.
Hey guys, both Dominic and I are loan officers here at Liberty Home Mortgage. So if you or anyone you know is looking to purchase or refinance a home, please email us at the elevateclepodcast@gmail.com. Subject line, looking to purchase or refinance a home. Email's in the description. And you just looking at your LinkedIn without even doing anything else, like looking at your LinkedIn in itself, it's like, what haven't you done? You know what I mean?
I have done a lot.
Yeah.
So what does your day look like today then? I mean, take us through that.
Yeah, so I have a son. So my day always usually starts with him because I have to make sure that he gets to school on time.
How old?
He is 13.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's probably watching, or he's going to be watching this because he looked you guys up.
Awesome.
He wanted to make sure you guys were legit.
Legit.
He came here. Yeah, he had all that. He's like, are they on whatever Spotify? I'm like, I have no idea.
Did we pass his?
He seemed very impressed. So
Okay.
you got an A+ for him.
Okay.
We passed a 13-year-old.
Yeah, we need it.
Yeah,
we need it.
validation.
We do appreciate any and all viewers, no matter the age.
Well, he will be one. But yeah, so I usually start my day. I know in advance essentially what transactions are going on and what legal work needs to be done. And so I start the day usually just planning on how that's, the priority is what has to get out the door for a day. So samples, in December, I did about a $7 million merger and acquisition deal for a company in Cleveland. In January, I did about what would amount to about a $7 million lease deal in Cleveland. I'm working on a $9 million land deal in Columbus as a lawyer. And then dispersed into that is the real estate agent work, right? So I do commercial real estate agent and residential real estate agent work as well. So I'm usually calling on those, lining those up, brokering some properties, buyers and sellers together. So
are you able to act as like a dual partner on that?
I actually can. I haven't done it yet, but the law does allow me to serve as both the agent and as the lawyer on the same transaction. However, there has to be very clear lines of what role I'm serving in, and there's there's no carryover. I haven't done it yet, and I don't know that I will, but if I did need to, I could do it.
Okay. And as far as like Volpini law, like I saw on the website, there's an extensive amount of things that you guys will cover. Not only is it just dealing with like corporate, commercial real estate, residential real estate, whether it be with like lenders as well, but you guys also practice like with injury law and everything like that as well. Where is the most time given, and also where is I guess the most revenue generated for your company as well?
Yeah, so I am primarily a real estate and business attorney. My law partner, Brian Zaber, and I will say he's the best, is the personal injury attorney. Okay. So that he focuses solely on that practice, and we do not share the space with one another because I wouldn't know what to do. And he is spectacular. I mean, his ability, he worked inside insurance companies. That's how he got a start. And then he worked defending the personal injury claims. And so now he flips his seat, and now he represents the injured when they're in a car accident or a fall. And he has this incredible amount of experience because he was both inside of insurance companies, where those claims usually reside, and then he was also defending against those. So he does just a fantastic job moving the case and getting great results for the clients, and they love him because he stays in contact with them and they actually talk to him. It's not like they're talking to a staff person about their injury, sometimes very, it's very personal.
Right.
Or, so he does a really great job. And so he's been able to, he's been out 20 years, but he started with me almost, kind of launching his career as a solo under my firm. And he just took off. He does a lot of business development. We talk a lot about getting out in front of people. I'm sure you guys could appreciate that, right? We can all appreciate that. If you want to, in my mind, if you want to grow your business, you have got to start rubbing elbows and getting out in front of people. All the tools are great, but you got to get connected to people. And he did a really good job at that. So he just started getting out in front of people, his name.
Like face-to-face meetings?
Face-to-face meetings, which was hard during COVID.
For sure.
Right. I mean, it definitely a little bit of a different feel, to do it. But he did it, and he did it very, very successfully. And I will tell you from my own experience that I feel like the greatest success I had was when I started getting out in front of people and really, and I do a lot of things in the community too, but meeting people on a business front and not being afraid to ask for the business, not in a pushy, aggressive, annoying way.
For sure, like a genuine.
There's a way that you can talk about, hey, let me support your business and you support mine without, being that person. And if you could finesse it, people want to do business with you.
Yeah, exactly.
They do want to do business with you.
And so we were talking before we started recording about Jason Therian, right? And this wasn't on the podcast, but Jason Therian, he was episode 8 or 9 on there, and he owns, Thunder Tech multimedia company. But what wasn't on the podcast, what we talked about a couple years ago, was he was talking about when he started his business, one of the biggest expenses that he had was paying for people's coffee and lunches, right? And he just called that his networking expense, because he was just like, here's a goal. I'm just going to go out and pay as much money as I can to get in front and have a coffee, have dinner, and I'm just going to pay for it and then just leave it at that. And then I was like, well, what eventually happened? He's like, well, over time, everything just started snowballing and his phone wouldn't stop like ringing because all these people were like, hey, you know, you were on my mind. Let's talk, blah, blah, blah. I have a deal, so on and so forth. So I think that's huge. Like, I think that's a pretty universal thing.
Sure.
It really is just being able to, number one, build your brand, but get in front of as many people as you can.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
I read an article a few years ago that said that there has to be 12 to 13 touches with a person before they'll actually give you the business.
Sure.
That's a lot of touches. I mean, that's a lot, not necessarily face to face, but they see a social media post, they get an email from you, you're meeting them for coffee. That's a lot of work to get the client one time. But once you do it and you get the client, then it's just that repeat. And then, you know, then obviously then they tell whoever and the business gets rolling.
Yeah, well, I think that, I mean, when you start anything, for somebody to say like, hey, if you go out and have lunch with this person, would you do it knowing that you would have to do it or talk to them 13 more times? But if you knew that you'd have their business for life,
right,
you're a little bit more motivated to do it.
That's
but
right.
Our mind naturally is like, oh, I had this person in, I wined and dined them. Where's the deal?
Yeah.
You know?
And it's hard to look so far into the future.
Right.
Like, I think Hesh does such a good job of thinking. He does a job where he knows his action is going to end up having a direct result, not next month, not in 2 months, but it's like, this is going to help me in 2 years. This is going to help me in 3 years.
That's right.
And I think that is such discipline to think that far ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, millionaire mindset, you know 100%. What I mean?
Well, it's like an 18-month return. I mean, you got to do a lot today to see the fruits of that in 18 months.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of businesses fail. They just don't have the endurance for that, right? To just wait and be patient, you know, to see that process unfold.
For startups, you're saying, or business in general?
I think for business in general, I think people, especially in today's environment, right, where we have the Amazon effect, and I'm seeing it even in the law, which is crazy because I never saw it before. Everybody wants everything now.
Well, yeah,
right?
instant gratification for sure.
Oh, I'm going to buy this piece of property and I need the document tomorrow. Well, we have this like saying in the law that says, well, you could get it quick or you could get it right, but it won't be both.
Yeah.
Right. So that's just the reality.
Yeah.
So I think that applies, that idea of everything being so instant and instant gratification is that if I do this today, I should see a result tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't work that way. And the beautiful thing about business, and you guys know because you're doing it, is the journey is the beautiful part about it. It's when the person calls you 12 months later and you had a lunch with them and you were following up and they're like, hey, you came to my mind and I could use you for this. And then it's just like, that was just so awesome. It was so worth it. Mm-hmm. You got to have some patience built in. And a little bit of
that is crazy. That instant gratification. I think a lot of millennials are pretty potent with that. I mean, even I was just talking to a real estate agent, a listing agent out in Aurora, and we're building them these like the sign-in sheets, right? Well, no, because his problem is he has an open house and he'll get 20, 30 people via traffic into that house, but he's only going to get like maybe 10 people that actually sign in.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So we were coming up with a plan like, dude, instead just like, here's a QR code and you're just going to scan it real quick. There's not much information on it other than my name and my number. And then that's it. That's all you need.
Right.
Because people don't want to take the time. And it's crazy picking up the pencil, putting your information in. Mm-hmm. It's like, that doesn't seem like a lot of work,
right.
But if it takes that much effort, you're losing the client already.
Yeah.
So it's back to that. Hey, I just want to click a button and I'm done. Kind of like, Rocket Mortgage.
Sure.
Click the button. Exactly. Yeah. That resonates with people, which is terrible.
Yeah.
Which is awful. But
I want to say I read something very recently that said our attention span back in the early 2000s was like 6 to 8 seconds, and now it's down to like 2.
I think we have like.
Yes, I read that.
I think it's like
that's scary, and I see that in myself.
No, I know what you're talking about.
You're working on disclosures, and email comes in. All of a sudden, you shift to the email, and then your phone blows up. Now you're in a text. 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, that's right, I gotta get back.
I'm pretty sure we have less of attention span than a goldfish or something.
Oh, that's
I
scary.
swear I remember reading this somewhere was like
a
goldfish is like 6 seconds you have their attention, and then a human being's like 5.5 or something.
Yikes.
I was like, oh my God.
Well, and I think along the same lines as that is that you are like stimulating multiple things at one time. So I've never done this before. Like I have the TV on, but I'm also watching a video on my phone, and I'm also texting or talking while I'm watching. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah,
I'm doing like 5 things at
That's
one
why
time.
we feel so tired by 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'm ready for naps.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Crazy.
That is pretty
Think about
insane.
It is.
If you really think about that,
is.
how much is going on in that 5 to 10 seconds? Text, TV on, maybe you're cooking simultaneously. It's like there's a lot of energy that's being spent, physical energy, and then literal like electricity, like bandwidth too. Like that was nothing you could do back in the 1990s.
Nope.
You know what I mean? Like,
wow. Like when I first started practicing law, and I'm like totally dating myself here, but email was the new thing. And we thought that was speeding up the process of people wanting you to respond now. And, because, oh gosh, you're not getting a snail mail letter that comes 3 days later. And then you can just kind of take your time, and like the snail mail goes back. And now everybody wants something immediate. Well, now with text messaging, it's like totally blown that up,
Yeah.
right? And now,
Oh, yeah.
now people really want a response now.
Yeah.
and now we're going to 4G, then it's 5G,
Yeah.
and then
Oh,
what's
yeah.
next? You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially too. I think the biggest killer is like read receipts, because like you're sitting there and you see the person read it, and you're like, all right, let's go. Where are the bubbles
yeah.
at? Where are the bubbles at? Why aren't you responding?
That's crazy how human nature is. You just I feel like it doesn't stop though, because if I get like Amazon, it's the 2-day shipping, but now I want the 1-day shipping. Now I want the within same day shipping. Like when does it stop?
Crazy, until they have a drone literally dropping it off within an hour.
No, I'm saying like when are we satiated? Like when
When's the max? Like when have we maxed out?
Yeah, when do we blow up?
That's
Yeah.
very interesting. No, I mean, seriously, if you do think about that, just with every like 4K TVs, 5K, right? Like VR, virtual reality, electrical cars, like it is interesting as far as like even like across the board with anything. Like what is the maximum potential like a human being could eventually lift?
That's right.
Like what's the maximum bench press that a human being could do? What is the maximum experience we can do in theaters or with TV?
Yeah.
Like it is kind of scary to think about. Like
That must
you,
be-
you look at something now and think, oh, this must be like the final consummation of what it is.
Right.
This is it. But it's like, no, they're already ahead, and there is something
way
else.
ahead. Yeah.
And have
is
you
something
noticed
else.
that in law, like as you've increased in your practice and everything, have you noticed like, oh man, like people are just way more like antsy about things now? I don't know if that's.
I don't know if they're necessarily more antsy. They just, everything's more immediate.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're commoditizing the legal service. And a lot of that has to do with, you have LegalZoom and I don't know what it is, Rocket, whatever,
Sure.
that you could just like, again, click some buttons and get legal documents off the internet. So I think they think an actual human lawyer can do the same thing. And no, we don't do that. We actually think through what we're doing. We are a thinking profession. We're not a forms profession.
Do you get clients that are ever like, oh, I read this online?
Yeah, I saw your post. What's the mug that somebody got you? Like, this is my, I Googled it, so now I'm an attorney.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
it
that's
says,
so funny.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I was looking through and I saw that. And I wanted to bring that up because is that how it is? Like, do you ever get calls where people are like, yeah, well, I looked this up and Google says this. And you're like,
Absolutely.
okay.
Laura, you listen.
Listen.
Wikipedia told me something.
Like,
else.
that's what we always have to say, too.
Yeah.
We have to tell a client. I got that line from Hesh, and I use it all the time. And I'm like, listen, guideline says this. The reality is, though, is this.
Yeah.
Right? Much different. There's a
Right.
big discrepancy. So
Yeah,
do you find that as well?
Yeah, I think the mug said don't
substitute Google.
Google search for my
For my law-
don't mistake your Google search for my law degree.
That's it.
Is what it
Yep.
so
said.
funny.
That's it.
No, but I've had clients that had come in and like Googled another state's law. I'm like, okay, that's great. That's wonderful that you think you have this, but that was Washington state law, and we're in Ohio.
Yeah.
And so it's totally different. So, okay, thank you for your efforts, but, I'm a lawyer. And then I had a call last week where somebody was trying to tell me what the statute of limitations on a claim was. And I said, oh, that is so fascinating because you're wrong. And I'm the lawyer, so no, I'm not going to take your case.
Yeah.
So if you think that you know more of the law than the person you're hiring, then you should probably just handle the matter yourself. So.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
interesting.
you want to do that too. Like people
Yeah.
want to do that to doctors. Like, oh, hey doctor, hey, my knee hurts really bad. It must be this. I looked it up online. Like, you don't do that to a doctor.
No.
Like, dude, a doctor is going to tell you, hey, what's up? Like, this is what's going on. You need to do this, that, the other thing. Oh, no. Like, I won't do that because I looked it up online. Like, you don't do that. Why would you do that to a lawyer? Why would you do that to a loan officer, a professional?
Sure.
I think there's
Sure.
just I don't know why there's such a disconnection with, oh,
Yeah.
hey, you're in this profession versus this profession versus this profession.
Yeah.
I'm just going to back everything up by Google.
Yeah. Well, because we're good at reading headlines, and when you read the headline, that tells the whole story, and now you know what the whole story is,
Yeah.
So now you could say, oh, I read online this. No, you didn't. You just read the headline.
Right.
I'm curious, what is it like working with people coming out of college, like when you were early on, just kind of like coinciding with the conversation we're having now with our world and where it's developed. What's it like working with individuals in our age group as far as like attorneys, people coming out of law school? Do you see like that correlates with some difference, or there's some differences between when you came out, and is it like in work ethic or expectations or quick results or anything like that?
Yes. So I think if you were to poll anyone who is my age, which I'll tell you is 44, I'm not shy about that, and to 54 we'll just take.
Sure.
So basically the people the lawyers I practice law with, I think we would all across the board say the same thing. When you came out of law school 20 years ago, I mean, you were blood, sweat, and tears that job. I mean, you were fighting for your spot. You would be the first one in, the last one out. You'd work literally from 7 a.m. till midnight sometimes to not just to practice law. You were learning. It was almost like an apprenticeship, right? The older lawyers were teaching you how to practice law. You don't learn that in law school, right? You don't learn that till you get into the environment.
For sure.
And you have to do an incredible amount, and you don't get paid as much. I think what I'm seeing now is, really it's a lot of people, I won't just say millennials, I just think the newer lawyers are coming out and they're saying, wait a second, we want work-life balance. We don't want to work 7 a.m. till midnight and on weekends. That's crazy. We want to just have a balanced life, and we think we can do that. So, and I think the individuals are much more bold about their expectations for the job, right?
Sure.
And they're defining what the job looks like for them, as opposed to the employer, the law firm defining that job.
Right.
And they're saying, no, I'm only going to work 40. And oh, by the way, now with COVID, and we want to work from home. Everybody wants to work from home. And not that you can't do aspects of practicing law from home, but in our environment, when you work from home, you miss the opportunity to learn from the people around you, the profession. And I think that gets lost. That culture of learning gets lost when you're sitting at home. You can't possibly hear, when we're in the office, it's much like the call center is, surprisingly.
Yeah.
We are shouting out to one another, who's doing what, whose deal's going south, right? Or who's did something great, or this client, and so there's a lot going on, or, hey, did anybody ever hear about this problem? Or can we fix this? If you were just sitting in our office, you would learn so much. And
I'm sure.
That's
like
right.
a fly on the wall, you're
Yeah.
probably learning a ton. You're probably learning 4 years
Exactly.
of school right there.
Right, and just the conversations, right? So, just me having a conversation with a client or an opposing counsel, or, a lot of times explaining aspects of the law to people, right? If you were sitting there listening, you're like, oh, I didn't know about the law.
Yeah.
You just learn so much that, unfortunately, the desire to work at home sounds great, that you could be in your, fuzzy slippers and your jammies, but you're missing out on the experience to truly be in an environment where you could learn the skill. When I came out of law school, I worked for what I believe is the greatest law firm for a young lawyer to start, and that's Reminger. And it was great. We got to handle our own cases. There were tons of lawyers around us with varying skill sets, and it was awesome. And I learned the most from being in the office and watching what they were doing. And I go back to that all the time, and I say to myself, would I be where I'm at today as an independent lawyer? I'm my own, I'm a solo lawyer in my practice, and then I have this, my law partner is personal injury, but would I be able to do this on my own if I didn't have that exposure and that experience coming out of law school?
Yeah.
Learning from them and knowing how to practice law if I was just stayed home and been a remote lawyer.
So does that make you nervous to see where the industry's going, per se? I mean, obviously doesn't affect you, but like, I assume you have some attachment to the industry. You want to make sure, hey, the practice goes well. Yeah. Being that you said like, hey, listen, you're not getting as much stimulus, you're not learning as much being outside the office. Are you going to have as qualified of a lawyer?
I think it's a good question. I don't think I know the answer to it.
Yeah.
I just have a hard time believing that if a lawyer chooses even to spend half the time at home and 2 days in the office, are they really going to have the skills necessary when they're at the 5-year level of practicing law where I was at 5 years.
For sure.
You know, there's just going to be a natural delay in, you know, getting to the finish line.
Yeah.
You know, that, you know, unfortunately, I think they're selling themselves short.
I think it's awesome that we're able to work from home. Like that's a cool aspect. But you're right, and I'm totally on board with you. I think that when you're in the office and you're in an environment that's motivating, that is, you know, uplifting, the spreading of ideas and everything, even if it's not necessarily just work related. Like Dominic and I often have different conversations, whether it's, you know, we're talking about philosophy, psychology, theology, like whatever it may be. I can't, hey, Dominic, you want to get on a Zoom call and talk about blah, blah, blah. Like, it's very natural, like, how we just kind of talk and free flow our ideas. Again, it's not necessarily work related, but it's, you know, helping your own, yourself as well. So I think you definitely lose that working at home. You don't have those ideas. You don't have that stimulus.
Right.
You know? Well,
and I think, too, you know, the working at home, you know, I could work anywhere, and I'm sure Hesh should tell you I'm a complete maniac half the time. But I could work anywhere, but I still believe that I am the most effective when I am in the office.
Sure.
When I have that dedicated time that I am in there, I am in the environment, I know what I'm doing there, and there is structure around it. I'm going to totally like blow your minds when I say this. I actually think in the real estate arena, the idea that the agent doesn't go to the office now because they don't have to, right? They're showing houses, they're doing whatever, so they're more out or they're working at home. I think every real estate agent should show up at the office and work an 8 to 5 job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think they show up, if they have appointments, they leave and they come back, they leave and they come back just like a normal work day.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happens, a lot of agents start in this business and they think, I'm an independent contractor, so I stay at home, I get my nails done, I go do this, I go do that, maybe I'll show a house, maybe I'll do a social media post, and they're out of the discipline of actually a work day, right? Now, I'm not talking about your top producers, obviously they figured it out, they did their time. But if you're starting out in real estate and you really want to make an impact, you're not going to start and go 8 to 5 from home.
Yeah.
Just it's this the structure of that industry doesn't demand it, and so you're not going to do it. But if you really want to be successful in real estate, I've said it all, and even for myself, if I wanted to convert completely to real estate, I would work 8 to 5. I'd go to the office at 8. I'd work my deals till 5, and I would go home.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be industry changing for those agents who'd be willing to do it. I was part of our brokerage used to be part of Real Living, which was a franchise. And we just went independent in January.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're just Volpini Realty. And I was connected to like a nationwide, all the brokers in Real Living nationwide. And there's a group in Massachusetts where every single agent in the brokerage, every single one of them came to work every morning. They had regular shifts, 8 to 5, and went home, every single one.
Wow.
And they were incredibly successful. Because,
I was going to say.
But again, the learning, the connection, the culture, there's so much that happens when you're working in a group that you just can't possibly mimic from Zooms and emails and text messages and staying connected and who's doing what. And just, it's a very, very difficult vibe. And I could tell you that not just from the worker, but also from the employer, right? As an employer, it's very, very hard to manage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think also too, psychologically, there's a reason why that would happen is because you compartmentalize stuff. Right? Like how they say, like, hey, leave your work at the door. When you get home, don't bring it in there because then like you're not 100% in it.
Yeah.
And you're
taking it work.
Yeah.
With
Your
you.
mind, you're like stretched across so many planes. Whereas when you walk into the office, you know, okay, I'm going to my workplace, right? As if you were like, you know, you go into the kitchen to cook. I go into the bedroom to sleep. Right? Go into the bathroom to shower. Like your mind knows those are the areas to do those specific things.
Yeah.
So it's more, I think, it has a greater affinity towards focus and your creativity to be pulled out when you're in that specific environment. You know, you mentioned something about how our day and age, and I think you hit it right on the head, desires more balance. What are your thoughts about that? And what does that look like in your life now being 20 plus years in this?
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying I'm not critical at all of the younger generation. I sound like an old person wanting to desire work balance.
Sure.
I actually think it is incredibly important to do that. Unfortunately, when I came out, that's not how we did it. So I'm not saying that when I came out, working 7 to midnight is the right way either.
Right. That's
so
just your
I
experience.
do appreciate the fact that this influence is coming in and saying, let's take a look at how we're really balancing our lives because it is very unhealthy, right? And so, you know, I do like the the push, so to speak, to change it up. I struggle with work-life balance. I mean, you looked at my LinkedIn profile. You should probably be able to tell. I probably, if I have a failure, it's in work-life balance because I have like 8 jobs. As my son says, my mom works for 5 people. It's like, no, I work for myself. I just have multiple companies, right? So I think for me, really this year, it's funny that we're talking about this. So this year, one of my resolutions was all around work-life balance.
Yeah.
What things, and unfortunately, even work-life balance is discipline.
Sure.
So, we're talking about the people who are balancing life over work and wanting to work from home and kind of have this flexible arrangement. Well, there's the other side of the spectrum, which is my spectrum, which is we work too much and we don't balance it up enough with life. And so we have to structure ourselves. So at the beginning of the year, I promised myself, I'm going to do these things to structure life events in so that it's not consumed. So yeah, it's so backward,
That's
but
funny.
I had to do it, right? I had to reverse the philosophy of the work-life balance, of the life-work balance to make it work in my favor. So, for example, I'm a dancer. I'm a ballroom dancer, and I haven't done it in like 10 years. And so I just decided, you know what? One of my life balances is I'm going to take a dance lesson again. And I just went for it. And I called up my old pro partner and I said, hey, could we dance 1 hour a week? Just so, and I don't know about you guys, but if I get in front of my computer, I could go the entire day and not move.
Oh, yeah.
I literally could go the entire day. And then I don't drink water, so I don't have to go to the bathroom. I'm like, this is the best. So I walk around dehydrated and I never leave my computer. I could do that. So for me, it's really critical to have moments where I'm taking a break, whether it's something personal. The other thing that I've instituted this year, and this goes out to all my people who are workaholics like me, is even when I started practicing law, as crazy as that schedule was, we always took a lunch break. We always took an hour lunch break. And I said, well, I just got out of the habit. I just work right through. That's a usable hour. I got things to do. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. There's something about giving your brain a break, stepping away from it, that actually renews you when you come back.
Sure.
And it makes you more effective. I read a study one time that said every 90 minutes, you should take a 20-minute break from the work you're doing and just go do something else before you come back. And there's also other theories that say you should take a nap. There's companies in Cleveland that I know that their employees have a nap cycle.
Nap pods.
Yeah. You go into this room and there's cots and you take a nap.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and the ones that I know that support it says highly effective.
You know who does
That's
that?
crazy.
And he didn't mention this on the podcast. When I went down to Florida with Coaster and met in Orlando with some agents, we went out to lunch with the head of the broker at the brokerage at that time. And he was telling us at lunch that he gets up early, goes and works out. He goes home. He works on some of the stuff for like one of his businesses up until about 11. He takes about a 45-minute power nap. And then he gets back up, he goes back at it, and then he works the rest of the day till like 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, it's extremely effective. Like it works so well for him.
Yeah. That's funny. I mean, I don't know. Like I was listening to Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan. This was like last week. He was on like last week and stuff. And he's going on obviously like his, tour around the States and everything. It's pretty incredible. I don't know if you know anything about Jordan Peterson.
I do know.
Okay, well, he just got off the benzos and everything. He was very sick for a while. Now he's going right back to his, to touring. And Joe was like, dude, how are you doing this? Like, you're a workaholic. Like, how are you able to do all these things? And he's like, listen, Joe, like, what am I going to do? Get on a kayak, take some pictures of birds, go back home and sit around all day? And he's like, no, I like working. Like working is when I get stimulus. Working is how I know that I'm doing good unto the world. Like I'm not doing anything if I take my kayak and I take pictures of birds. Like I like doing that stuff, but that's not something that's not like fulfilling. You know what I mean? So I totally get it. I guess there's different sides to it too.
Yeah.
But that's
a perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Obviously he's very high echelon, like on that spectrum and everything. But so you have dancing. What else do you do for leisure?
Well, I'm really into the wellness space. So I teach a fitness class on Saturday mornings.
At a church?
Let me back up. Yeah. So I'm the founding director of a church in Cleveland called Common Ground. And we just started this year in April. And I've always taught my prior church and now this church. I teach a strength training class, a Christian strength training class at 9 a.m. And so that's super fun. And then I run these wellness challenges through my one company, and I basically encourage other people to get well right after the holidays. So focus on getting your body back in line with where it should be. And we just launched the Wellness Challenge. We have 33 people participating.
Awesome.
And so we compete against each other for a 12-week period on 5 areas of wellness, right? It's not just how much weight you lost. So there's 5 areas, and we compete against each other. So we just had week 1. So I feel like I've just been spending my time making sure that I'm maximizing my points every day and following wellness. So that's an interest to me. I love football. I used to play in a football league until I tore my ACL. I would still be playing if I
No kidding.
Yeah.
I know.
What position?
Well, in that, have you ever heard of Cleveland Plays? I don't even know if they're around
No.
anymore. There used to be a co-ed football league called Cleveland Plays, and it was flag and 2-hand touch, okay? You had to have 5 guys, 3 girls. There was no part of it that was 2-hand touch. It was full-on tackle. We just didn't have pads on or helmets. It was insane, okay? So the ambulance was there every single weekend because somebody was hurt, including myself, because I got hurt one time.
Yeah.
But I did that, and they had other sports, they had volleyball and softball or whatever. And so I did that probably from 21 to, I think I tore my ACL at 31 when I had my son.
Yeah.
Wasn't ideal. He was 1. Carry him around. I know. I was on crutches. But yeah, that I was like, I'm super passionate about sports, right? I'm tall. Obviously can't see because I'm sitting down, but I'm tall and somewhat athletic. So I like anything sporty. Golf, oh my gosh, I'm terrible at it, but I love it.
Yeah.
You know, it's so fun to me. I just love it. So super sporty.
Awesome. Very
Working
cool.
out biking for all. Are you guys bikers?
I used
Like
to bike
not
a lot.
biker in a motorcycle, but in a bike.
A bicycle. I used to do other trails and everything back at when I was at BW grad myself. So
Yeah,
we're
your neck of the woods is exactly where I would go down in that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I did that all in college, and then my bike got stolen, and then I stopped.
That's a sad story.
It's whatever. I'll get a new bike one day.
yeah. Go on. Don't let that burst your bubble. Get back out
Get
there.
back out there.
Get back
Yeah.
out there.
I don't know.
That's awesome.
We'll see.
Well,
So-
I explored the metro parks that way, right over in your.
Oh, the Metro Parks
Yeah,
are beautiful.
I
You know,
know.
we have Brian Zimmerman, the president of the Cleveland Metro Parks, coming on next
wow.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that section is beautiful, and I'm not even like I said. I just kind of fell into biking because you couldn't go to the gym because of COVID, and then somebody said, "Hey, do you want a bike?" And I'm like, "That's not really my thing," you know. And I said, "But I'll try it," and then I ended up falling in love with it. And let me tell you what, biking, you have the greatest legs.
Yeah.
If you, ladies, you want legs, get on a bike. It's incredible. Peloton at home, whatever it is, you could just really have nice legs on a
Absolutely.
bike. It's like
Bike-
crazy.
It's just, I don't know. Biking was always just, I loved biking. I would just like put one earpod in, like listen to music,
Yes.
and then just kind of like, because you don't want to do, for me personally, I didn't want to
Cars
do
and
2 of
stuff,
them
no.
because I didn't know if someone was going to try and pass me. So I always put one in and would just, go to the Metro Parks. It was just like very scenic. I don't know if you've been around that way. But, you have the waterfalls, you have the nice trails and everything. And I think I want to go back to that, especially when you have so much workload here. And then just going right back to nature. Because I feel like, I personally, I always feel like the most relaxed when I'm just outside and it's just, the sun's beating down. Obviously, it kind of sucks in Cleveland. We have a huge snowstorm coming on Thursday. So that's not good. But
There's a lot of beauty in that too, though, man.
skiing.
Everything calms down when it snows. Nature gets very quiet, and that's kind of like I think we flow with the seasons as well. I mean, there's you hustle and bustle in the summer, and you're out a lot, but in the winter,
We're
just
hibernating.
bundle up and get
Yeah.
out there.
We're
I'm telling
hibernating.
you, there's a lot of stillness out there that would calm you down. I think so.
I want to get into some of the real estate though with you. So right now in the R market, right? So you do commercial and residential. So first off, tell us about COVID. How did that affect you guys?
Well, it really didn't affect us. The COVID didn't, other than obviously you had to have some concerns around, if you had an open house, you had multiple people coming in, you had to be conscientious of that. If you're going to meet a client, you had to be conscientious of that. When you're going on a showing, do you have the mask? We didn't really see a stop in the business or the slowdown in the business. And as you guys know, I mean, real estate is gangbusters right now. I mean, it is just insane, and it's not going to slow down anytime soon. So COVID, I don't think really made a difference, other than, I guess I should say, is if you can make a correlation between, and I'm not sure, people have speculated if you really can, the fact that the sellers are not selling, right? Because we have an inventory problem, right? We don't have enough houses. Sellers aren't selling because they basically went into their homes and they decided to start rehabbing their home. And once they invested money in their homes, are they really going to sell it? They're going to enjoy the new patio they put on and the new, extra bonus room. And so not that that's necessarily the reason why we have low inventory, but.
Well, but you're right. I mean, people are equity rich.
Yes.
Very equity rich. I mean, they were saying it was like a 20%, definitely like at least 20% in aggregate throughout the United States in appreciation from March of 2020 to what's forecasted March of 2022. Like, that's pretty incredible. You know what I mean? Like, you're gaining like 50, 60 grand of equity. You're right. A lot of people are just like, you know what? Why sell in a market where I'm not going to get anything? I'll just HELOC and just put a new patio up or cash out refi, use the money on a nice vacation or something. But where do you see the market going?
Well, obviously this isn't going to stop anytime soon.
Tell us about that.
And well, I just think that I don't see with the supply chain issues, labor shortages, the rates being low, although it looks like the Fed's going to raise them in March.
Four by the end of this year.
Yeah.
Still low.
Still historically low. But not
low.
what we're used to as of the short term.
Sure.
I just don't see it changing. I think if you look at numbers too, I think that new construction, because of the supply chain issues, the labor shortage issues, that new construction isn't back where it's at. So if new construction doesn't get back where it's at, you're naturally going to have a deficit on the inventory because those people who would otherwise go and buy a new house don't have a new house to buy, or right now the houses are priced so high on new construction that they can't even afford it even with rates. So I think that has to open up a little bit in order for this to balance out. The question I always get asked is, is this inflated price, right? These listing price and the sale price being so inflated, is that the actual real value of the home, or is this just an inflationary period, and that we're going to see this sort of adjustment back to a lower period? So these people who went out and bought their house and paid $75,000 for a apartment bungalow are now going to try to sell it in 5 years, and they're going to lose that 75.
Right.
I actually don't think that's going to happen. I think that you're going to see the prices stay high. We've never had a correction. If you look at it, the correction for the housing market, the price of the value of the home to adjust for even inflation, right? It's pretty much stayed flat. Well, naturally, if all the prices are rising, the home has to go with it too. It kind of lagged, never made it there. So I just think the prices are going to stay high, and those people that were buying are going to see that they're going to be able to sell it and not take a hit on it.
Yeah. So do you think
that's a fear of a lot of people, right? That's a lot of, a fear of a lot of people buying, as I'm buying high and I'm going to go sell low, and is that foolish? And I think that they're going to find that their investment stayed stable.
But you mentioned lack of skilled labor, lack of inventory, obviously with supply chain issues. I mean, to be honest, even before COVID, we still had a new construction issue. Yep. We still had a shortage of skilled labor. That's just how it's been. I mean, could it get better in the next couple of years? Absolutely. But by the time the amount of this millennial wave that enters the industry, I don't think it ever catches up
to it. Well, my brother is in construction, right? And so I just could tell you from him, the cost of materials is astronomical.
Try building a home these days.
Yeah. That's, I even know, I represent a landlord and as a real estate agent. And the carpet squares for, to put down in an office is up, 42%, just the carpet. So is this really, really exaggerated and inflated prices on materials? And then you add the labor shortage, and then you add the COVID labor shortage. So we have a regular labor shortage. We just don't have enough workers working. But then you have the COVID labor shortage, which is people are out with COVID. Now, if you're in construction, how do you manage a project? You need the labor to show up. And whether it's because you can't get them or because they have COVID, your timeline is already off.
Yeah. My fear with this is that we're not making enough renters into homeowners, because the United States, it is the American dream, but our tax system is very, very beneficial to having a home. It doesn't give you any credits or anything for renting, right?
That's right.
So, you have principal pay down, you have, you can write off your interest. You obviously have a home that you can appreciate. and that doesn't happen. Your rent just keeps increasing, right? So my fear is that a lot of people are going to be out of the market where they're not going to, it's going to lag. It's going to take time for them to build that appreciation. Right. I don't know. Do you think that is an issue in the United States necessarily?
To be honest, it's really hard for me to answer because I think real estate has been and always will be the greatest investment that you can make. It's a very solid investment. And to me, the rationale of renting, unless obviously you're in a position where you cannot, I get it, you're just foreclosed from it. But if you otherwise can own a piece of real property, that is your best bet, right? And to now with the rates the way they are, I think any person would be foolish to continue to put the money in the landlord's pocket. Doesn't mean you have to live in the Taj Mahal. Mm-hmm. Just own a piece of dirt with a structure on it and then make your payments there and you'll retain your value and you buy the next one. Mm-hmm. My family made their living doing that, right? We developed property. My dad was a builder developer, so we would buy. And it's hilarious because my dad would build a home. We would, if it didn't sell quickly, right, there's carrying costs. You got insurance, property tax, mortgage, if there was a mortgage. If we couldn't sell it, we moved into it. And then I used to laugh. I said, we didn't even have a for sale sign in our yard, but our house was always for sale. So if a car came creeping in front of our house, my mother, who is the quintessential real estate agent, would be running out of the driveway. Are you looking at my house? It's for sale, even though there's not a sign in the yard. And sometimes she would sell it and half our furniture would be gone with it too. I'm like, okay, well, but she made her living off that, of just knowing that real estate was such a great investment. If you could own it, develop it, move it, whatever, you're gonna make some money. And anybody out there, if you have the ability, especially with rates the way they are, to own any, rental income producing properties as a landlord, that would be definitely a great thing to get into.
No, what did I text you the other day from her name from Shark Tank, Barbara
Corcoran?
Yes, she was on Yahoo Finance. Remember I texted you that? Is like she at the end of the interview she said real estate is and always will be the slowest but best way to maintain a fortune. Yeah, and he's like no matter what, that's just how it is in the United States. So unfortunately for some people who are, like I said, in situations where they have the money, they just get beat out of these multiple offer situations.
I know.
Yeah, it's tough. What about the commercial side of it? Like, you see a ton of, especially post-COVID, obviously, where you realize that everybody can work at home. A lot of for sale signs up in front of these massive buildings. The gym I personally go to is like in the old Richmond Mall. I got to imagine like Beechwood Mall is a ghost town pretty much half the time as well. Like, are we just going to start to see a lot of these commercial buildings go up and all of a sudden Amazon's just going to start doing like Amazon, like hospitals and acquire everything and take over the world? Or like on the commercial side, what do you think about it as well? And like, where does that go in the next 10 years? Do you think maybe there's a massive rebound and people start going back towards that? Like going into the buildings and everything, or what's your outlook on that?
Well, it's interesting because everybody asked me early on, COVID means that there's going to be all these places for rent and that the rent rate's going to be really low and you could get a deal. That is not true at all.
Yeah.
There's available space, no doubt, but it isn't as if these commercial, and I'm talking on the landlord-tenant side now, just are dying. I listed a retail property on Pearl Road where I'm at in Strongsville, and we've probably had, I can't even tell you, I get like 3 calls a day, 150 people inquire on the property. People are out there, it's just different. Okay, so it's just different. You have a lot of startup businesses, people wanting to come out of working their 8 to 5 and being their own boss and coming up with unique ideas and wanting to launch a business. So those people, they need somewhere to go. So that's the aspect of real estate, commercial real estate, I think is still intact. And I just had one of my clients, I'm doing a tenant representation, and I just closed a tenant representation actually. Back to your point about, lease space, it's out there and people are looking for it. But I'm representing a tenant on some space downtown, and we went and looked, and it wasn't as if there wasn't, just empty space everywhere. And I thought for sure downtown, because it got hit with the riots and COVID and all those things, it really wasn't. It's still pretty well, tenanted downtown. With respect to the mega malls, right? So the Richmond, even South Park and Strongsville, what's going to happen? I don't know.
It's crazy.
I think that they're ultimately, I can't imagine that the economic development directors of a city, now Richmond may be different, but at least I'll speak to Strongsville, that in the middle of this area that is emerging, and Strongsville's a really hot market, that they're going to just throw down, instead of South Park Mall, they're going to put an Amazon center. I think what's more likely to happen, you're going to get an investor in there that takes the concept of the South Park Mall and turns it into a Crocker Park or a Pinecrest.
Sure.
That makes
an outdoor type.
I think they're going to take, because the reality of what's going on now is people, it's not about malls were created to do shopping, okay? That's, you went in, you bought what you needed, you got all this availability of all these different stores. I think the difference now is the shopping is the experience.
For sure.
It's not to buy. So I think that's where, Crocker Park and Pinecrest have really made a difference, is that they turned it into an experience. Right. And that the hopes that when you're there, you'll buy something.
Right.
Right. You're going to walk up and down and
Right.
look at it. And then all of a sudden you're, oh, that's cute. Or, I need to get that. But I think that that's what's going to end up happening. And I think my sister's actually a director at Oracle, the software company. She's a rock star. And she and I talk about this a lot, is what are stores even going to look like? Are stores you're going to walk in and have all this inventory? Or you're going to have these concept stores where you walk in and they have one of each thing they sell, and you have a computer that you could touch it and feel it. Because remember, Amazon can't give you what it looks like, how's it going to fit you, especially for girls, right? Is that going to be a little baggy here and a little tight there? But you could see it, you could look at it, you could touch it, but you're still ordering it off an iPad in front of the display.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of smaller stores. But it's still, the shopping experience is going to be more on the experience and less on the shopping.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I go to the mall and I just walk out with nothing. You know what I mean? Like,
I went into South Park, man, in Strongsville. I felt like there was nobody in there. I was like, there's
is
literally
weird. It's so weird.
No one in here.
Yeah.
And it's really sad because back in the day, Tower City Mall downtown was gorgeous.
Yep.
I mean, and it was like a shopping experience. It was sad to see what had happened to that. And I hope maybe with this, this movement toward the shopping experience, that they could really do even something with that. But Galleria Mall downtown closed. And maybe that's just a movement out of, downtown and into the suburbs as well. So
Sure.
yeah, I think you see a lot of these pop like nostalgia shops, right? Because what's a Lunchbox, the one in the mall, I'm talking about?
I've never heard of it.
It's basically, they sell a lot of this nostalgic, items, hoodies and stuff, like when we were children, really. Because, the biggest part of the buyers now are obviously millennials. Millennials are so attached to nostalgia for whatever reason. That's why they're doing that whole new, when we were young, that concert out in Las Vegas with all the big groups that we all listened to back in the day.
Wow.
And people want to go to that because it's like, oh, dude, I used to.
that.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I listened to that back when I was
Brings
a
you
kid.
back.
Exactly, and I think that's like a huge sell point now is that experience. Like, I want to feel like a kid again, So I think that's to attest to your point. Yeah, it is. I think that is very, very real. That could very well be a reality, especially with people that are gravitating to that type of nostalgia.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I have a question about like your mindset towards business. I recognize on your page, obviously. So you helped kind of start this church,
yes.
right? And is it like a specific religion or non-denominational?
It's non-denominational.
Awesome. So faith has obviously played a big role in your life.
Very significant.
If we can touch on that, I'm curious to understand, as big as you've kind of come in law, real estate, everything like that, how do you build a business without building ego and allowing faith to be what kind of is the driving force behind your business?
Well, faith was the source of the business. So just a little backstory, when I started my law practice. So before I started my law practice, I was just an employee. I was working at a law firm. I had a managing lawyer who kind of oversaw everything. At the time that I started, little known fact, I was actually working for my ex-husband's law firm. And I was his employee, him and his partner's employees, and I actually managed and helped them build their startup law firm, and then I practiced law for them as well. So I was oddly in the back office kind of managing what they were doing. Then obviously I find myself in a divorce. Now what do? Your personal life is sort of in chaos and is imploding, and so is your professional life because they're tied together. It's a very, very difficult time. Mm-hmm. And I had a 3.5, 4-year-old son. So not ideal, right? But my immediate turn was to God because I knew that was a source of foundation for me. And I don't know how much you guys read the Bible, but there is a Bible verse, Jeremiah 29:11, which just says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you. I was in the depths of despair. Like, I just didn't even know what I was going to do next. But every day I woke up, I said that to myself. And he really fed to me the clarity of the vision of just start it. Just start what I made you to be, is to be this leader in this way. Just go do it. And I was like, okay, well, that's great. But I got this little kid, how am I going to do
scared.
this?
Yeah,
yeah. And I was really launching 2 businesses at once because I had a side business that was my little dream child thing that I did called Jurisync. You probably saw that on the website. So I was doing that as well. And I would just, that would be my repeat every day. And I realized that if I didn't have as my partner God, that I was going to have a really tough road ahead of me.
Sure.
Because it does require faith. It really, really does, because it gives you hope that the next day you could come back, right? And he was so, God is so abundant, and he's so provisional, and everything that I could possibly have asked for happened, and then some. And I can't, when I look back over the last, now it's, it's going to be 10 years for me on my anniversary here in September of this year, there's no way, even as great as I may be with all the skills and the experience, there's no way I could have done the last 10 years if it wasn't for the presence of God in my life and where I had put my whole hope in the truth of what he had told me, which was that he was, he knew my plan and that he was going to prosper me and not harm me. And he did. I mean, the only reason I'm sitting here, the only reason I have a law firm in Cleveland, I could be a real estate agent and I could be this, that, and the other, is because he's faithful. The promise came true. He was so faithful to me. And you guys could look even back, I don't know how long you guys have been at this business, but if you just took snapshots of time, right, the linear chronology starts to look like, all over the place, right? All these random dots all over. But when you really are truly looking back at it, it couldn't be more of a sort of mosaic of exactly how every little opportunity connects you to the next opportunity in such a beautiful way that for me, it's very hard to deny that God didn't have his hands in that the whole entire time.
That's right.
And so part of my wellness challenge, we do have a prayer component. I do encourage people to pray every day. To exercise an incredible amount of gratitude, so it doesn't matter where you're at in your life, and sometimes that's hard even for me. So I'm not here to be a hypocrite, right? I have my bad days too.
Of course.
There's some days I'm questioning, like, God, where are you? Because I don't feel that any of this looks like it's for you. And I've had some really, really tough times over the last 10 years. But there's nothing that wasn't covered, right? There's nothing that I wasn't able to overcome and get to the next best place for myself. And so that's why I do it. I was so honored to join this pastor, Paul Crocker, who's amazing. You guys should come out and just listen to his music. He plays secular music as well. He's just he really is a rock star. And to join him, he does a Christmas show every year that's super fun. I dance in it, obviously, as the dancer. Awesome. So we do a lot of really fun things. And I have a heart for the community. I believe you serve your community. If you're going to be in it, and if you're going to have a business in your community, you serve that community. So I try to do as many things as I can to serve. I teach my fitness class. I lead a women's group on Thursdays, try to bring women back together. We supported the food bank this year, as you guys know, because we had a box here. We were able to bring 2,000 pounds of food to the food bank, which all my clients who participated, like, so generous. They were drop shipping $1,500 worth of food to my office. We didn't have a place to put it. I'm like, we aren't the food bank. So I don't have a place to put this. But I think that if you just do life right, work-life balance, I do believe in it. You serve your community, and you have a strong faith in God. I think you're gonna have a really great life.
Sure. But it's obviously not once you commit to that, it doesn't make it necessarily an easier road. I think, in fact, once you actually accept that in your life, you become way more open to the temptation and the things that kind of are coming against you. But what's funny is, if you shift your perspective, you can have the perspective that your closed doors are just as good as your open doors. So what has that been like for you as far as closed doors that maybe you've had in business, or setbacks that eventually were setups that you realized, where you can now say hindsight vision is 2020?
Right. Well, you can just take my starting story, which was my divorce and having to leave my employment. I mean, that was definitely a closing of a door. Yeah. right? And that was my baby. So my ex-husband and his partner were a startup, but when I came into that business, I was like, we're going to put some structure around this. And the day I had my son, I almost died having my son, but payroll had to go in, and that was on my plate. So I'm like, half dead, and I'm like, you got to bring me the payroll book. They're like, what?
Wow.
Unfortunately, back then we did payroll books. But I was like, I need my computer and the payroll book. And they're like, no, that's not how this is going to go. And I was like, look, we have two options. Either you bring me the payroll book, or I'm going to get up and go to the car and get the payroll book, because my employees need to get paid. So even though I didn't have an equity piece in it, it was my baby. I poured my heart and soul into that business and supporting them. It was really, really hard to shut that door. There was so much of me. And I'm just going to be flat out honest. I cried an entire day when they shut off my access, my email. I mean, it was just heartbreaking to me. But to your point, that door shuts. It just opened a door that I was meant to walk through. Do you know what I mean? You can't see that at the time sometimes because there's so much pain around it. But God had that door. It was already waiting. The funniest thing is, like 6 months earlier, I was sitting in the back of their office, right, as an employee, managing their money in their firm. And I literally was saying to myself, I can never be as successful as these guys were. I can never generate the business that they did. I wouldn't be able to get one file on my own. Like all these thoughts of just denial and negativity. And boy, God was like, oh, boom. Okay, you're going to have to try it out.
Yeah.
Like, I know you better than you think you know yourself. And I'm going to show you what you're capable of. And he opened that door up. And boy, did I walk in. And look, all the clients, I mean, this has been 10 years, have trusted me with, look, legal matters are really personal at times. That they trusted me to handle it for them. And it's funny because a lot of people say you don't have clients, they're your friends. It's true.
Yeah. My
clients become my friends. I become part of their team. If it's a company, it's a team. If it's an individual, it's like I'm their family. I would sit at their table. It's a very different feel. But I do owe it all to God because I literally couldn't think how to get here but for the rock that he was giving me at that moment.
That's
and
amazing.
as you're just talking, I'm really just taking that all in. I wonder, because we had he's an Army veteran, Tim, an author now, Tim Natali. He's one of Dominic's good friends. But he hurt his back really bad back in, where was it?
Was it Yugoslavia? He said?
Slovakia. It was in Slovakia. He fell off a roof and broke his
Listening
back.
better than us.
A couple ribs and everything. And he had found his passion in the military, right? In the Army.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he goes back to civilian life, and it's like bang, 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 like bills. He's got no college degree. He's got to get a job. All of these different things that are just piling onto him, right? And he says similarly to you, I look to God and I found what are you testing? He's this is a test. It's like he's testing me right now, and he understood that.
Right.
And then he moved on. Right.
Right.
He's got 2 books now. He's doing very well in his current career. He's helping a lot of people overcome anxiety, depression, so on and so forth. And as you're talking, I don't know, but like I know that our society's become more and more secular. I don't know if there is a correlation. I haven't researched it or anything, but I'm just making an assumption with a lack of faith and an increase of secularism. Does that increase the amount of anxiety and depression because you don't have anything to believe in? Whatever religion it is.
Whatever it is. Sure.
You know what I don't know. I don't know. But what you're saying is, hey, listen, I assume you came from a family that had those traditions, right? And you could do whatever you want with it. Like, believe me, I don't care. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of these people that I know who went through, the gauntlet and came out, and they all say like, I had faith. And I believed in God. God had a plan for me. That's incredible. I just don't know if our society being more secular and being more anxious has a correlation to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
don't know, but I know from my own life and from what I could see from the people that I've been around in a church setting, there is this idea, it's like a visual that I have, is that you have this anchor and you toss it up, right? And so God's holding that other side of the anchor for you. And that's how you get through life, is you're anchoring up. right? For these people that don't have a belief, right? They don't have a faith. They don't have hope. Like, how you're going to have depression. You're going to have anxiety. Interestingly, anxiety is one of the most talked about concepts in the Bible. It's over and over about do not fear, don't be anxious. Those words come over and over. He's covered that in his life book called the Bible. So I think when you're not connected to that, it is. This life is tough. This life will beat you up. Even if you're reading the Bible every day and you're the best Christian you could possibly be, you're still going to get beaten up, right? But to get beaten up, but know that you have the faith, the hope, and the love that endures is everything. And the one thing I will say, we obviously, because we're founding a church, we do see that people are sort of getting away from quote unquote religion. I want to encourage anyone who's listening or anybody that might be in this room that religion is just that, it's religion. But the relationship that you have with God and with Jesus Christ as your Savior is personal. It's not rules. It's not rituals. It's not a checklist. We all fall short of the glory of God. We are all sinners. That doesn't qualify one as another. I think part of the reason that people are more secularized and got away from it is because what religion became, right? It did not adapt to a modern world. And I'm not saying everything that happens in this world is okay, but I'm saying it didn't adapt to the people. It didn't adapt to millennials, right, who think differently. It just kept being, we're going to do the same thing we've always done for the last 300 years. Or, and I think if you really take the time to explore who God is, who Jesus Christ was, and learn about it, it can offer so much help to everyone.
Amen.
It really, really can.
Yeah.
And it's not. It doesn't have to be hokey or wacko or people passing out and falling down. And it doesn't. It really doesn't. I really encourage you, not just my church, but to go explore a church, find a church family. My church family has become my family. They're like the great. I have breakfast with. I was just actually at a lunch with them today. Somebody's birthday. It doesn't have to be everybody acts perfect. And I don't memorize Bible verses. I got to read them over and over and over again. It's not like that. That doesn't make you have a relationship with God.
It's actually
the
opposite of that.
It's a heart thing.
I agree 100%. That's so beautiful you say that. I actually think it's the opposite of perfection. It's actually the acceptance of imperfection. The fact that like this thing is a journey, and to me, faith is, very quite literally, like what the quote is in the Bible, is like the conviction of things not seen, like in the things unheard, unseen that we can't necessarily comprehend. My favorite verse, and I like to, so I grew up like very hard-headed Catholic. Catholic high schools, went to John Carroll Jesuit.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Was around that nonstop. I got closest to God once I didn't formally leave it, but once I made the decision of like to kind of step outside of the church and just look within myself and look at my connection to everything that kind of is happening in the universe, and to look at the fact that like this is all atoms, I'm all atoms, and it's vibrating and moving. We're all energy, and I'm a part of that and everything that's moving in the universe. And once it's so interesting you bring that up, because I think, and I don't know it either, but I would argue that there is some sort of connection to that, because it's people's more so like belief in science and the fact that like, oh, well, it's nothing that I can see, therefore I can't have any belief in it. Well, it's like you use a microwave, use lights, and for me, my faith has been, and I try to study across the board a lot of different things. I like looking at the Bible a lot, but I read it not from a Catholic or Christian view. I read it from just a spiritual individual.
The pure world.
That's it.
Pure word.
And apply it in that way. And for whether you believe that there was an actual man, Jesus Christ, that walked this earth, like Romans 8:28, that all things work together for good for those who love God, those who are called according to his word. I think that is a profound truth across the board for any individual. I don't care if you're black, white, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, whatever you might be. I think that is such a profound thing to believe in, to have faith, to know that I might go up and then go straight and then fall down and actually go back, but eventually I'm going to keep going forward, to know that literally all that stuff in hindsight vision is 20/20 and it all worked together for my good. That allows you to have such a beautiful perspective in your life, to know that I might go through shit, and in fact I'm going to.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's all a part of that.
Right.
Because I think there is such a beautiful thing in suffering, because life kind of is a suffering thing. We're all kind of sitting here like, what the hell's going on?
It's a very
there's a lot of things
very
that
nihilistic
happen.
Time.
100%.
I think you'll find that with a lot of religions. A lot of religions, they just mostly do good works unto people, right?
That's it.
And I don't think any religion is going to say, hey, you have to be, adulteress, all the different things that are sinful. Like, I think you'll find different correlations between many different religions on the spectrum that say, like, just be a good person. It's not like there's no code or anything like that. It's literally just like, hey, the Bible's not going to teach me how to be a good person. It's just be a good person. It's for you to kind of figure that out.
That's right.
So and to attest to your other point, just like, I think that a lot of you should go and look at other religions and see, kind of get their different perspectives. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but at least 100%. It's perspective.
I would say to anybody, go read Taoism. That is probably one of the most beautiful spiritual teachings there is out there. It's beyond my words. I don't think it would do it justice. To dive so deep into that, like, and the teachings that it says, or the teachings that it provides are just beautiful. I would highly recommend anybody go get Wayne Dyer's interpretation of the Tao. Change your thoughts, change your life, and just consider it. That's all. It is life-changing.
So do you ever have it like a polarization between, the religious part as well as like being a lawyer? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you have a client who's just so frustrating and you want to be just, to lack of better words, just like beat them up, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But you have to refrain from that. How is that for you, that push and pull?
Yes. I often say it is very hard to have the faith that I have, and also in the profession I'm in. Because remember, the foundations of what, at least I believe, is, mercy, grace, forgiveness, kindness, joy, peace, love, right? That's not anywhere in law practice. None of those principles apply, right?
Beat your competition down.
Exactly.
Beat to the top.
You're ego-driven.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even as an employer, sometimes those don't apply. I think it's hard, and I do have my moments. Look, again, being a follower of Jesus Christ doesn't make me perfect. It just means that every day I try that panel of things, and I put my trust in the one. But, I do try. I do show an incredible amount of forgiveness, right? Especially when somebody has either wronged me or, try not to be angry, right? That's kind of hard. But try not to be angry, be merciful, show grace where grace is, is called to be. And it works. It's actually... When you do it, when you practice those things, it brings the stress down. Do you know what I mean? When you could start thinking, am I being merciful? Am I being gracious? Am I being forgiving? Again, it's just a standard to live your life by, right? It just brings it down. And you're like, okay, I'm not going to allow this to frustrate me. And look, I'm Italian. We get hot-headed and and usually that's what happens is I start screaming, and then I get over it. But for the most part, I think I really try to incorporate in my practice those things. And I could see that it actually benefits my business when I do it. But it is hard. You have an adversary you're fighting. And I don't fight dirty by any stretch of the imagination. Sure. It's like some lawyers I do. But I'm also getting out of the fighting business, and I'm doing more transactional or contract work. So you don't see it as much.
I want to, real quick, have you ever heard of Dave Meltzer, Meltzer? I'm going to send you a podcast once we're done here. I'll get your number. It's like 30 minutes. I just highly suggest you listen to it. He talks about building an empire without building an ego, and how in his practice, he's never focused. He doesn't say, I watched the video the other day that says, I don't put the pressure on myself by saying I need to make $1 million this year. I go out there and I focus on abundance and say I want to manifest $1 million as quickly as I can, and then I tune into the service that I can provide to other people. And he talks about how there is an ego gratification that you find in our world, and how we're dressing up this outer thing that we are walking around in on our short temporary time on this earth, and how that's why people are getting drowned in sickness, greed, and in all this stuff.
I will tell you just from my own experience, I have never focused on the money piece of my business ever.
And that's
detached from it.
And that's important.
Day one. Because there'll never be enough. You're going to make the next 10,000, the next 20, the next 20. And guess what? You're just looking for the next. It's never going to fulfill you. You're always going to be going for the next amount of money.
So how do you do that then? Stoic. How do you
I'm
detach
tell
from
you,
it then?
well, this is the only thing you should
when
be
people
thinking
have
about.
bills and they got to wake up and their car's trash and they got to get brakes, how do you do that?
I totally understand all of that. The problem is when you start chasing the money, you lose your sense of self in the process. What you should be doing every day, and look, I'm going to tell you how you solve it. You show up and you bring your best self, your 100% best self to the work that you're doing that day, the money's going to follow. You bring your passion, your love for it, your best self, and I'm going to be engaged and connect myself and do this work, the money's going to follow. I started all the businesses I started, the very first year, they say first year businesses don't make money. From the first day, I made money. I didn't have a profit in one of my businesses. I did not focus on the money. People are like, I don't focus on the money. I know that I'm going to go out and do a bang up job for somebody. The money's going to follow. They're going to want to pay me, right? Because of the work that I did for them. So I just don't follow the money. The following the money is going to send you round and round and round and round.
One of our mentors at Liberty, Matt Luptek, says, do the right thing and money gets curious.
That's right. It will follow you. And it has. I mean, it's been in ways that I could never even imagine. And of course, tie that with God and the abundance that he provides, and voila.
Yeah.
It's perspective, really.
Amazing.
I mean,
That's amazing.
we live in we said it a couple podcasts ago, like we live in the best country in the best time frame. You know, like being poor today is better than being rich in the 1800s. You know what I mean? Like, I think that like when you take money out of it and just realize like what you have, I mean, so you have a bad month. Like, again, we always say a bad month doesn't make you a bad banker. You know, it's just, if you do everything right, then the results will eventually come. And I love that. That's why I have such an appreciation for the sport of wrestling, because you could do everything right. Literally, your diet could be on point. You did all the workouts. You have the best training partners, the best coaches. You feel amazing going into a match. Now it's the semifinals. You've been dreaming to get first at this tournament, and you fall short because a ref screws you over. Well, it's like, I did all the right things, and maybe this God, God plays into that too. Like, God, right. I did everything I was supposed to. I did everything. I worked my ass off. Why did I lose this match? But that, again, it's like you don't stop there. Like, you just have to keep doing it. And that's a struggle sometimes that I have. And we talk a lot about like amor fati and everything, and a love for fate, and everything happens for a reason. And even as verbal as I am with that, I still struggle with it all the time. Like, why? Like, I don't want to be like the why is me or woe is me person, but it sometimes it seeps through the cracks, right? And you just have to build, like, just like tell yourself, like, dude, it's gonna be okay.
Part of Taoist practice, and it's in Ecclesiastics as well, is it talks about how there's a time to run, there's a time to walk, there's a time for like hustle and bustle, there's a time for rest. And a part of that is just understanding too, and like as you were saying, it made me think of how the fact that like all that stuff is a puff of smoke. It's stuff that is beyond our control. It's more or less our reaction to it. But it's also in like what Taoism practices or teaches is like you only have the wheel because of like the spokes in between it. Like that's what makes up the wheel. You only have music because of the silent parts in between each note. Like start to listen for that. You only have a business that's constructed in so many deals because of the ones that fall off. You experience joy because you also experience sadness. You experience gain because you've also experienced loss. So it's not necessarily looking at and saying, why am I experiencing this? But just kind of also like having an appreciation for that. Like now what helps me kind of get through my days where I wake up depressed, sad, upset, not wanting to do anything is recognizing that there's a time and place for this. And in that, it's also recognizing the fact that I can experience the dichotomy of the fact that I'm experiencing this now, but it too shall pass. Just like yesterday, I was experiencing such bliss. And this will pass too, just like that passed. And that kind of allows you to live in the sense of like, there's a time and place for both, and now is that time, and to not get so attached to it to the point where it bogs you down and brings you down.
In the moment, in the moment, it's
hard.
So hard.
It's hard, but that's why perspective and that teaching is everything. Which is why I have it on me. Search within, like look at yourself within versus your external circumstances, and recognize kind of your like what lessons might be in them, or also like how like rise above them and not think that you're at effect of everything. But more or less that it's just an experience or a happenstance, something that's just happening, Well,
I know a lot of times when I have a disappointment or, I missed an opportunity or something happens that isn't super favorable, I always tell myself, God didn't want me to have that. That wasn't for me to be. If he wanted me to have it, he would have given it to me. Right. And I wasn't meant to have it. So, just let it go. And a lot of times that really helps me just squelch those feelings. And again, a lot of ego driven. Why it should have been me. I was the best person for the job. Why didn't I get that deal? Whatever the case may be. So they just say, well, that wasn't for me. I wasn't supposed to have that. Right. Yeah. And I'll have the next one. Yeah. And it's just, it just kind of neutralizes those feelings.
It does, because it's very easy to have that perspective when you truly put your faith in believing that if it's meant for me, it will get to me. And the things that aren't will not pass through his hand to me.
It's a filter.
It is.
How are we doing on time here?
You're at an hour and 20.
Awesome.
Oh, wow.
been a lot of
That's
fun.
crazy. All right. Well, hey, as we kind of wrap up, we like to give get a little bit of advice from you. And you've been great. This was awesome.
Amazing.
This is so fun. In your time, owning many successful businesses, we always say, hey, what is your one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's looking to start a business of their own?
Oh gosh, there's so many.
Yeah.
I think I've already said it. I think if you're starting a business, then you've already made a decision about what you want to do, professionally at least. And I think that you commit yourself to every single day bringing your best self to the work that you do. Whatever the passion is that driven you into that position, you bring your best self to the work, and understand that there's going to be highs and lows, and that you're going to make it through it if you just keep showing up to do that job every single day.
What about the advice to, as we close out here, the advice to an individual who maybe is doing well in what it is they do, but it just doesn't, it's not their passion. It's not lighting them up. And they think there might be something else out there for them. And it might be maybe their hobby, let's say. Maybe it's, an individual working in the workforce at any corporate company, and they love photography on the side, and they know that they can make the jump towards that. Would your advice be to absolutely take that jump?
Well, I can't say absolutely, because obviously there's financial parameters around, right? That they would be in a position to be able to make that or structure their life in a way to make that a reality. But I think if you have a passion for something, and I know I do, and I'm going to do it in retirement, but if you're passionate about something, I think that you put all your resources behind it. There's a reason you're passionate about it. There's a reason God put that on your heart. Go for it. Do have a plan. This idea of just jumping off and hoping it all turns out right. I would definitely have some plans. I follow a model. It's called EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. I encourage you, if you're starting a business, to explore that. Read the book Traction by Gino Wickman and get your foundation in place so that you could start very much from the beginning on how to structure your business for success and how to monitor and track it.
Amazing.
Wait, I got to ask before we stop. Wait, what does retirement look like?
I would love to retire at 50, which is 6 years away. But all my friends joke because they're like, ha, 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 you?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you're going to start building
I say
houses.
it, but we'll see if it'll come. If I had my dream, I would have a dance studio. But of course, my girlfriends say, if your dance studio will have to be the best dance studio with the greatest mirrors and the greatest floor and all the, So they joke about it. But I would love to do something in fitness and dance, because that's where my passion is.
That's awesome.
But of course, right now I'm, doing what I was called to do now. But that would be or just do nothing. That would sound great too.
For a week.
Yeah, for a week.
For a week,
I'd go get my nails done, and they'd be like, "Okie dokie, what deal can
Now
I
what?
do?"
Yeah.
I really like deal work, so I do a lot of deals, and I do really, really like it. So more realistically, I'd probably always still do some deals.
Sure.
I'd just be way more selective.
Sit on the
maybe
board.
I do 2 deals a year or 3 deals a year instead of, hundreds.
Or be a mentor. Go mentor up
mentor.
and coming,
Yeah.
or go teach real
my
estate.
class. Teach my real estate class.
That's
Woohoo!
right.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Elevate Cleveland podcast. Dominic, wrap it up for us.
As Chris stated at the beginning of this podcast, we are licensed loan originators for the best mortgage company in the land. That is Liberty Home Mortgage. Guys, if you or anybody is looking to purchase or refinance a home, doesn't matter if you've done this 1, 10, or 100 times, call us, email us. The email is in the description below. Reach out to that email. In the subject line, put looking to purchase / refinance a home. Whatever it is your goal is, Chris and I will reach out to you within 24 hours, and we look forward to helping you with whatever it is your specific home goal is. Thank you. So, Laura, it's been fun. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Appreciate
This
it.
is a good time.
Excellent. See you guys next week.